Hello, in this video, we will be talking about data backup. So basically, the 31st of March is the International Backup Day. Like why we mention on this specific day? Because after it, we will have the 1st of April, which is International Fool's Day. And yeah, sometimes different things happen during the 1st of April, and it's better to do the backup of your data and make sure like if something happened, you will be able to recover it. So what is data backup? So the idea is kind of a simple, like the data we have, which we operate, it could be different data in different devices. It's not limited just to personal computers. Like it's important for our operations. So this is why from time to time, we are copying the data, doing the backup, and store it somewhere else externally. So it could be another device, it could be cloud services, things like this. So if something would happen in our computer and we would lose the data would be not available and so on, we could copy it from the external repository and restore the backup, like to have the latest known version. So if we would talk about why it's important to do the backups and why the International Backup Day is important, so some surveys reveal like 76% of respondents who participated in some kind of a surveys, like companies, they had severe data loss, like critical data loss. So it means like probably they face some kind of a challenges continuing the operations and so on. And according to this survey, 45% of them lost the data permanently. So it means like I do not have the data anymore. I cannot restore it anymore. So this is why if we would have a backup, we would be able to restore. But always there is a question like, would we be able to restore the final version, or maybe some portion of it would be missing? But it's better to have at least some data rather than no data at all. And why those kind of issues could raise, like why we are losing data in our systems? One of the reasons could be just the hardware failure. So sometimes it happens like your hard drive is just stop working, some sectors are corrupted and so on. So this kind of nowadays is not so critical. There is just up to 1% of fail rate, but it happens sometimes. So even if you backed up your data in some external device like external hard drive, there is a chance even the backup will face some kind of hardware failures and you won't be able to use it. Another reason usually is some kind of cyber attacks. So some kind of a statistic says like the cost of data breach is approximately like 4.45 million. So, and yeah, we are talking more about big companies and so on. So the effect could be reached not just by losing data, like the data itself could be visible to third eye, something like this, but also we cannot operate furthermore. We probably could pay some ransomware to get it back. We could harm our reputation as a company. So the damage could be severe in different ways. Yeah, and talking about the cyber attacks, so about 70% of cyber attacks in 2022 were ransomware. So what is a ransomware? The idea is kind of a simple, like if the third party gets access to your system, to your data, they encrypt the data. So they do not delete it in the beginning, like just encrypted. What does it mean? Like you are not able to access your data anymore. It's here, but it's not available to you. And the attacker usually says like you should be paying some amount of money and we will let you know what is the key for decryption, something like this, or we will decrypt it. So about 85% of organizations in 2023 faced at least one ransomware attack in the past year. So they usually face it, and there are two like directions. Like statistics says like, but different statistics have different numbers. Like this one says like 97% of companies were able to recover and get back the data. But how they were getting back the data? So 70% got it from the backups. So if I have a backup version, so I just can restore it from this one and just ignore the attacker. Another portion, for 36%, were meeting the attacker's demands and paid the ransomware. And if you will calculate the sum of those, like is not 100%. So it means something is wrong. But it's not wrong. Like sometimes we have backups, but we are paying the ransom as well because our backup is not full, like it's missing some data and so on. So sometimes there might be situations when both of those solutions are integrated. And also just mentioning, not always paying the ransom helps you because based on the statistics, some of the cases, even after paying the ransomware, they do not give you the data back. When we are talking about companies, it's kind of clear, but like, is it really important for humans, like to protect your data something and do backups? So about 78% of persons who participated in the survey mentioned they use backup, but only 33% do it regular. So it means like I'm just sometimes doing backups and forgetting. So usually you do not have some kind of a systematic approach, and it might lead to a situation when you have the backup, but you do not have the recent version, which is the most important to you. And also, what the survey revealed, like 63% of users are not sure what's the difference between data synchronization and backup. Because backup usually is the version which we are doing a copy and storing somewhere. Meanwhile, data synchronization is just like duplicating data in 2 or 3 locations just to make sure it's available. But what sometimes might happen with data synchronization, if I will delete data in one device, it will be synchronized and deleted in another device. So yeah, talking about individual users, like more than half of users are backupping just most important data, not all the data. So it's also very your choice what you will be achieving. And about 50% of cloud users do not use physical backups. Yeah, and when we are talking about what type of backup we could use. So there are multiple different solutions, and just the basic one would be like, yeah, if we have system like this, like in the initial version, I have my data, so I backed up. Usually the first version backup is the full copy, so something like this. But then there is a tricky situation to choose for me. Do I want to do the full backup? So it would mean like if this part was new, so I'm still backupping the full version. If just assume I do it systematically every week, like if after 2 weeks I have this, like the data was doubled, I anyway do the full copy here. So what's happening in this case, like we will be doing the full copies and it will take kind of a big portion of our space, like because I'm using all of those. Probably I could delete some of those, like just have 2 recent copies, something like this. But anyways, it takes time until we do the full copy, especially the system, the data is huge. And I bet it's easy to restore. I have the final version, I'm just restoring it. So to simplify it, to reduce the amount of data which should be backed up, so there are 2 main types. Incremental, so they are backupping just what was new. So in this week, this portion was new, and this week, those 2 portions were new. So I just have some portions of those. So if I would need to recover, I would need the initial version, and then I would need to add those 2 additional ones as well. With differential backup, so the idea is similar to the first one, but it's a little bit different. Like I have the initial backup, the full backup, and then I'm adding what was new after this one. So it would mean like I need to have the initial one and the last one. I could skip this one because it's included here. So there is some kind of like difference between those, like how long it will take, the less data I will be backupping, the faster it will be, but the more data I will backup, the easier the process will be how I'm recovering it to get the final version. And we do the backup. So yeah, it could be some external hard drive, external device. It's up to us because then we are sure like I'm storing it somewhere else. It could be some network attached storage, like which is in our local network and where we can save it. It could be cloud services. So different providers provide you options like where you could store the data, your backups. And in most of the cases, the recommendation is to use a hybrid approach, like to have not just one copy, because what happens if I'm losing the hard drive where all my backups are stored? Yeah, there might be some issues. So this is why the recommendation is to have at least 2 different type of data backup storages. But when we are talking about backup, yeah, like if you will have the backup, it solves the issue. If you are losing your data in your system, you have a copy which could be restored. It's tricky how to estimate it, like how often it should be done, where it should be stored, but we have the copy. But at the same time, having a backup, if we do not execute some kind of additional security measures, it could lead to additional attack vector, because 96% of ransomware attacks were targeted to backup repositories. So it means like sometimes it's easier to get access to the backup rather than to the real system. So this is why the main steps which are recommended when you are doing the backup is the following, like to use multiple backup locations just to make sure you have several copies in different type of external storages. Schedule systematic backups, like because if you will be trusting just your guts, like when it should be backed up, like sometimes you could forget, sometimes you could not be willing to dedicate this amount of time on the specific date, so you will be postponing and postponing. And when you have the backup, you should be encrypting it to make sure, like, yeah, it's secure, or use some kind of a secure storage just to make sure no one else will be able to get access to your backup and use it to get access to your data. And one more recommendation is from time to time, test your backups. And you did it just to make sure, like, yeah, its integrity is not corrupted, the hard drive is still operating, because if you rely, yeah, I have the backup, but if it's not functional anymore, it's the same as having no backup at all. So the main idea is like, yeah, it would be nice if all of us would be dealing correctly with our data. There would be no mistakes, no data breaches, nothing. But if you are not sure, and always there is a risk because of human error, attacker actions, or hardware failure, software failure by corrupting the data, we should have a backup plan and to back up our data to make sure we will be able to restore and operate as usual.